Hello, it's me again, here with your math video. Aren't you excited? Okay, so today we're going to be going over the quadratic formula. Now, what is the quadratic formula? When will we use it? La-di-da-di-da-di-da. This is all brand new stuff. My mind. Okay, but the quadratic formula, I'm not going to start going over that just yet. I want to go over a little bit farther back and start with FOIL. Now, what is FOIL, this mysterious word? It's not this shiny stuff that you stick on chicken. No. Although it makes it taste better and it's shiny, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the mathematical FOIL, which is first, outside, inside, last. As you see, my terrible handwriting just underneath these. Now, what does that apply to? Well, this applies to something like x plus, let's say, 1, and x plus, let's say, 2. So whenever you have an equation like this, which you guys already know, you multiply the 2 first, and you multiply with the outside, and then you multiply by the inside, and then by the last, and you will end up with an equation like this. This is all going to be with variables real quick. X squared plus bx plus c. Now, that's all extremely simple, and you guys have done this, and if you haven't, you definitely need to go back. You have to know how to do this to be able to do the quadratic formula. Now, what if, let's say we don't have this. We don't have this as a guide, and we have an equation like this, set equal to 0, and we want to figure out what x equals. Now, we can always factor it out like this, or we can use the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is extremely important, and the one thing you have to remember, and your book will generally do this, is that for the quadratic formula to work, this equation, just like this, x squared plus bx plus c, has to be equal to 0. That's what it has to be set at, otherwise it's not going to work. And you'll have to go through all these tedious little steps that are honestly a waste of time. Now, what is the quadratic formula exactly? Well, the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now, this is going to be one of the most complicated equations you're going to be seeing in math, all the way up through trigonometry. This is just tricky to remember, but once you get the hang of it, you'll really be able to remember it, and it's going to be extremely useful to you. There is a little ditty that goes along with it. Some students know it, some don't. I guess it helps you with memorization. The only thing you have to remember, and I'll explain it later, and the biggest key is this negative. This is extremely important right here. Now, let's go over an example to figure out what one is. So, let's say we want to do x squared, just x squared. X squared plus 3x minus, let's do 4, equals 0. Now, we all know how to factor like this. So, if you factor this really quick, you get, what do you get? You get x plus 4 and you get x minus 1. Now, for those of you that if right here, if I just confused you, you're on the wrong video. You need to go back and you need to watch the one to where you go over FOIL and you understand all of this. For the quadratic equation to work, you have to understand this. And if this confused you even in the least, you have to go back and watch the next video. The last video, I mean. Now, let's try this same equation, though, with the quadratic formula. So, this can also be ax squared. So that way we have the a from the equation. Now, the a here, since there's nothing, is the same as having a 1. So it's 1x squared, because if you multiply it by 1, multiply anything by 1, it stays the same. Now, the b is this 3 here. And this c, because we're subtracting, is a negative 4. It's the entire negative 4, because what we're doing here is the same as adding negative 4. But we're just subtracting to make it simpler. So, to start out, we're going to need to do negative 3. And since it's a positive, right here it needs to be a negative. Now if we did x squared minus 3x, you would have to make this positive 3. It has to be the opposite of what it is to begin with. So then we do 3 squared minus 4. And then here we add in the variable 1 because it sits in the place of a, but really it's not in the equation. We just have to know it's there. So we plug in 1, and then we plug in a negative 4. Because as I explained earlier, this 4 is actually a negative 4. Even though it says plus c, we're doing plus a negative. So after that, you put the 2 and the 1, because it's in the a position, underneath the rest of the equation. Now, what I like always to do first is here and here, I like to simplify those out, just so I can have an equation without so many parentheses. That tends to bug me. So, let's rewrite this, and believe me, with the quadratic equation, you'll get good at it, because to finish it, you have to write the same equation just about 1,000,000 times. So you do 3 squared, and now 4 times 1 times a negative 4 is going to be a negative 16. But since we're doing this subtract 2, a minus a negative 16 is the exact same as adding 16. So 3 squared plus 16, and we put that over, 2. Now, to simplify this even farther, let's square this 3 and then add it to 16. Now we all know that 3 squared is 9, so 9 plus 16 is 25. So you have negative 3. And also another thing that I want to point out is this plus or minus that I've had in every one of these steps is wildly important, and you want to keep that just until one of the last few steps, and I'll explain that later. So then we have the square root of 25 over 2. So if we simplify that even farther, it's negative 3 plus or minus 5 over 2. Now this is where the plus or minus gets extremely important. Now, in a quadratic equation or a binomial equation like that, you see, as of right here, we have two answers, x plus 4 and x minus 1. So what we have to do is we have to make this a plus equation and a minus equation. So you simply do negative 3 plus 5 over 2 and negative 3 minus 5 over 2. So here, this one will get 2 over 2, which equals 1, and here we get negative 8 over 2, which equals 4. So see, we have 1 and 4. So here, we're ending with the exact same answers that we had before. Okay, now a quick insert here. This 4 is a negative 4 because if you look back into our examples, when we factored it out, it says x plus 4 and x minus 1. Now to get the answer from this, what you need to do is you have to figure out what makes x equals 0. So here, negative 4 for x, make plus 4 equals 0. That makes negative 4 one of your solutions. Also, this positive 1, since it's x minus 1, well, if it would be 1 minus 1, that makes it 0. So that makes this positive 1 and negative 4 two of your two solutions. Say something that's just difficult and we can't quite factor out by ourselves, and we can't figure out the answer just so easily. So let's say 2x squared plus 10x plus 3. And remember, I have to put that equals 0 just to make sure the quadratic formula works. Now, if at any time you feel like I'm moving too fast or you're confused or you just can't keep up, remember this is a video. You can pause it, you can rewind it, you can go and feed your dog and then come right back. No matter what, there should be no excuses to be confused unless I'm teaching this wrong. So, if we continue on though, it's negative 10 plus or minus square root of, 10 squared minus, that should be a minus 4 times 2 times 3. And all of this goes over 2 times 2. And this line should extend all the way. Okay. Now, for me personally, instead of just simplifying it this time, I want to simplify pretty much all of the equation that I can in one step. Now, if you feel like that's moving too fast or whatnot, you can simplify in one step or more, in 2 or 3 steps to get to the next part that I'm going to, and that's totally fine, and it's all up to you. Now, after this has been simplified, it's going to be negative 10 over the square root of 100 minus 24. So 100 minus 24, and that'll be over 4. Now, like I said, if you need to do this at a little bit of a slower pace, that's totally understandable, and nobody's going to judge you for it. Now, if we simplify this again, it'll be 10 plus minus square root of 100 minus 24, which is 76. And we take that over 4. Now, it's time like these where it gets really complicated, especially with the square root. Now, if you know how to get the square root to a perfect square and you take out everything, that's totally fine. But just for time's sake, I'm going to be using my calculator and taking the square root of 76 to get a decimal where I can round. And the square root of 76 on my calculator is 8.7. Let's just round to the 10th for time's sake. Now, negative 10 plus minus 8.7 over 4. So we do the 10 plus 8.7 over 4. And we do the negative 10 minus 8.7 over 4. Now, this is only going to give us one answer, which negative 10 plus 8.7 equals negative 1.3. So on my calculator, I'm just going to go straight ahead and divide that by 4. Negative 1.3 divided by 4, which equals out to negative 0.325. Now, here, what I like to do just to make things simpler is add the negative instead of subtracting. It just, for me, it makes things go a lot smoother. Plus negative 8.7, that divided by 4. So this equals 4.675. And I'm sorry, this negative 4.675.